Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you guys. Today we have probably, I think, the most requested adventure deck just based on the comments that I saw in my, let's talk about the adventure engine video, when I kind of threw out like, hey, let me know what kind of adventure decks you want to see. I think by and far Adventure Tenyi was one of the most requested decks, and it was definitely one that I planned to cover. I just decided to cover it a little bit sooner than planned because you all were still very interested in it, and it is a very, very powerful and very fun deck. So I can definitely see why that was one of the more requested ones there. Yeah, so this deck was a bit intimidating at first when I started researching it. I was like, okay, just looking at the list, you see a lot of combo pieces, and it might not be inherently obvious how they all fit together. But good news for everyone who was playing Swordsoul Tenyi before this, a lot of the kind of combo reflex memory, I guess, that you pick up from that deck will actually translate over to here. And anyone who was actually playing Rose Tenyi before this deck, or before the new pack came out, this deck is pretty much just straight up Rose Tenyi with the adventure engine added. So I actually considered going into Rose Tenyi a little bit during the last season, but I ultimately just didn't get around to it. Had I known that, it was just, Adventure Tenyi minus the adventure, I probably would have gotten into it a bit just to get a little bit more comfortable with the deck before jumping into it when the new pack came out. But that said, it's not that bad actually. There are a lot of different combo lines that are available to you, but I do plan on making a combo guide at some point for this. The thing is though, there's so many different lines and there's so many different situations just based on what you're playing against and what hand traps your opponent has, that yes, I could show during a turn one what you can do uninterrupted, but that so rarely happens, and there are so many different things you can do in that circumstance that it almost feels like better advice to say, rather than look at a combo guide, just jump right into some games and then just look at what you can make with your opening hand and just kind of go for it from there. I mean, that's kind of what I've been doing, but I guess that could also be a result of just playing more Master Duel over time and just getting more and more comfortable with these combo decks. Plus, I mean, we've all played against Halkarorodon decks sometimes, and I actually do this sometimes. If you're playing against a combo deck you're not familiar with and they're just going off and you can't stop them, don't concede right away. Just let them play out their turn one just to watch what they do uninterrupted, and then that way you can not only learn their choke points, but then if you go to play that deck yourself, you can then kind of observe and learn that way what to do. And that actually happened to me a couple of times with Adventure Tenyi when I was testing the Adventure Phantom Knight deck from yesterday there. I actually ran into a couple of those and I didn't have a hand trap, but I was like, I'm just gonna let them play it out. So that said, it is relatively self-explanatory, right? The main thing we're trying to do is just get Hulk out. Good old Crystron Halki Fibrax. It's just any two monsters, including a tuner. One of the more common ways is to get an Ashuna out, right? Which you can sometimes, well, I guess you can't get Hulk if you fetch it with Ashuna there, but additionally, we have our Red Rose Dragon is actually going to be our most common one. See, I was all still stuck in Swordsoul Tenyi mode where it's oh yeah, Hulk usually use Adhara, but no, it's actually Red Rose Dragon, which is going to be our normal summon, which is important to note. But the cool thing about Red Rose Dragon is if you use it for a synchro summon, right? You can special summon any Rose Dragon from your deck. That's going to be Roxrose Dragon here. Then when Roxrose Dragon is summoned, you can special summon, or you can add rather, a card that mentions Black Rose Dragon. That's going to be Basalt Rose Shoot here. Basalt Rose Shoot is a quick play spell that lets you special a Rose Dragon from your hand or graveyard. That's going to bring back that Red Rose Dragon you just used for a synchro summon. So basically, as long as you can use Red Rose for a synchro summon, it by itself can make a Halki Fibrax. Now, how are we going to use Red Rose for a synchro? Well, it's actually pretty easy. We're playing a whole bunch of Tenyi monsters, and I should actually try to fit in a third Vishuda. I was thinking about that recently. We're playing a whole bunch of level 7 monsters that can special summon themselves, like our Vishuda, our Ashuna, and of course, good old Wandering Gryphon Rider. Now you might be thinking, well, Gryphon Riders are Omni Negate though. Don't we want to end on that? Are you sure we can just use it as a synchro material? And the answer is yes, because Red Rose Dragon being level 3, level 7 Gryphon Rider, we're just going to go into Baron. So it's okay to give up our Omni Negate if we're just going to go into another one anyway. Not only are we going into another Omni Negate, but then we just go into our combo. So that is very much one of the strengths of this deck, is that you often will start your combo by summoning Baron. So right off the bat, you've already got an Omni Negate to protect your combo. That's not assuming, or that's assuming you don't open rather a call by and or a crossout designator, something like that to protect your plays. So then with Halki Fibrax, what we're typically going to do is go ahead and grab Jet Synchron if we didn't open it. If we did open it, that's okay because we are playing 2 Mecha Phantom-Beast O-Lions, so even if we did open a Jet Synchron or an O-Lion, we'll still have enough targets to do the full combo in the deck still, but ideally you get a Jet Synchron, and then from there you go into, of course, Auroradon. Auroradon's going to get you your tokens, and then from there you're actually going to use Auroradon's second effect in order to pop one of the tokens and itself in order to get an O-Lion. So now your board looks like O-Lion and the 2 tokens that you have left over from the Auroradon. So you'll use the O-Lion and one of the tokens to go into Denglong. Denglong is going to, oh, and then of course you also have the Baron if you started with that as well. But anyway, so then you use the O-Lion and one of the tokens to go into Denglong. Denglong will let you add 9 Pillars of the Yang, which is yet another Omni Negate in the form of a counter trap. So from there you can use Denglong's effect to send Ashuna to make it level 7. Now you can use Denglong with one of your 2 tokens that you still have. You still have 2 tokens because O-Lion gets your token. You can use Denglong with the token for level 10. Or, you know, that's if you didn't already summon your Baron. You could also just leave Denglong level 5 and go for an 8 as well. In that case, you could potentially go for a Baxia, because then what you could do is use the Denglong. Denglong is always going to summon the Chiwen from the deck. It's our only Yang Zing in the deck. We're playing 2 copies just in case we draw one, so we can still combo off. Yeah, we're going to summon a Chiwen from our deck, and Chiwen is going to be our primary card that we're going to activate 9 Pillars with. So sometimes you'll just leave Chiwen on the board if you can't do anything with it, but if you were able to summon a Baxia, then you can sync the what do you call it, the Chiwen and the Baxia into a Chao Fang. And we all know again from Swordsoul Tenyi just how good Chao Fang is, being able to shut off light effects. You can actually use Chiwen in any level 8 synchro. It doesn't always have to be Baxia, because Chiwen can be your light Yang Zing for Chao Fang there, so that can also be very nice. So again, that's kind of what you would maybe do in a quote-unquote standard line most of the time, but again, it's so hard to really say what a standard line with this deck is, which again can make it a bit difficult to learn, but honestly, I do say that practice is the best form of teaching when it comes to a deck like this. It really pays to just jump out. Of course, you can start in like solo mode, right, and just like play out a few opening hands, but again, the opponent's going to have interruptions often enough that learning how to play through them is almost a more, not even almost, I think it is a more valuable skill than just knowing what to do turn 1 uninterrupted. That's not always the case. Now, of course, it takes a balance of both knowledges there, but this deck is very resilient to playing through like interruptions and hand traps. Again, not only are we, you know, using the adventure engine, and not only do we often lead with Baron, but we are, like I said, playing the 2 call by and the 3 crossout designator as well. So on top of that, we're using Protos in combination with Emergence as a nice little finisher, because often at the end of combos, you can get an extra level 8 synchro, so you can just grab Chi Xiao to search your 1 Emergence to grab Protos for a free Protos. It's like, on top of everything else we're making, our multiple Omni Negates, right? Why not? Let's just go ahead and throw a Protos on top of there. The extra deck should look mostly actually pretty familiar from Swordsoul Tenyi. We're seeing a lot of the similar combo pieces. Denglong could have been included in Swordsoul Tenyi before, but it's definitely much more useful, or not useful necessarily, but impactful for this style of deck. We're playing number 42 Galaxy Tomahawk because this can actually be used in place of Hulk in order to get a Auroradon on the board. If you don't open, you know, your Roxrose Dragon, but you open like 2 level 7 monsters that you can special, like your Gryphon Rider and your, you know, Ashuna, or you know, you special your Tenyi and then you do your adventure line and get a Gryphon Rider. You can potentially overlay your Tenyi and your Gryphon Rider into Tomahawk. That'll let you get a bunch of tokens, and then you can use those to make Auroradon, which only takes, you know, machine monsters, and then from there you can go into plays by using Auroradon to get O-Lion, and then just kind of picking up the combo from there a little bit. There's just a ton of different ways to play this deck out, and like I said, as a result, that makes it a little bit hard to explain straightforward combos. So unlike the Adventure Phantom Knight replays where, you know, I started off by showing like a standard uninterrupted combo line or 2, and then we went into some like more interactive games, we're just going to see a bunch of interactive games for today's video. So before we jump into those, let's go ahead and break this list down card by card, and then we will get right into it. So we are playing 2 Chiwen, Light of the Zing, 1 Jet Synchron, 1 Tenyi Spirit Adhara, 3 Maxx, 2 Mecha Phantom Beast Olion, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 3 Red Rose Dragon, 1 Roxrose Dragon, 2 Water Enchantress of the Temple, 1 Swordsoul of Taia, 1 Swordsoul Strategist Longyuan, 2 Tenyi Spirit Vishuda, 3 Tenyi Spirit Ashuna, 1 Wandering Gryphon Rider, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 1 Archnemesis Protos, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Swordsoul Emergence, 2 Rite of Aramesir, 1 Dracoback the Rideable Dragon, 1 Fateful Adventure, 2 Call by the Grave, 3 Crossout Designator, 1 Basal Rose Shoot, 1 Infinite Impermanence, and then 1 9 Pillars of the Zing. Down here in the extra deck, we've got 1 Herald of the Arclight, 1 Denglong, First of the Zing, 1 Yazi, Evil of the Zing, 1 Baxia, Brightness of the Zing, 1 Boarload Savage Dragon, 1 Swordsoul Grand Master Chi Xiao, 1 Chao Fang, Phantom of the Zing, 1 Baron de Fleur, 1 Swordsoul Supreme Sovereign Cheng Ying, 1 number 42 Galaxy Tomahawk, 1 Salmon Great Almirage, 1 Monk of the Tenyi, 1 Crystron Halki Fibrax, 1 Barricade Borg Blocker, and then finally 1 Mecha Phantom Beast Auroradon. Okay, yep, like I said, now that we have covered the list and talked about the deck in a little bit and how it works, this is definitely one of those decks that it's better to see how it works than just explain it. So let's just get straight into those games so I can show you. Okay, so this first game, not to toot my own horn or anything, but this is going to be a spicy one. This is going to be a game we're going to be playing second going against Evil / Live Twin. And we actually managed to pull off a pretty sweet OTK here after our opponent goes here. So I'm actually really eager to show this game off again, not to toot my own horn or anything, but toot, I did pretty well. So opponent starts by summoning their Leela. I've got the Imperm, but the opponent has the Crossout Designator, and unfortunately that is going to be the only hand trap in this hand. We are playing 42 cards, so sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to open hand traps when we are going second. That's typically why I like to stick as close to 40 cards as possible, but this is definitely one of those decks where you just end up cutting a lot of really valuable stuff if you try to strictly stick to 40, right? So I honestly thought that it was best to go up to 42 in this case, for this deck specifically. So again, our Imperm was our only real form of interaction / disruption with this opening hand. So our opponent's going to get to combo off uninterrupted here. Of course, that's going to let them go into not only... oh wait, hang on. This is pronounced Kisikil? Somebody told me in a comment how the red evil twin is actually pronounced, but long story short, yeah, they're going to get to go for a Trouble Sunny here. And they've even got a Sunny Snitch, which is actually going to be pretty important to play around a little bit. Not play around necessarily, but more keep in mind with this hand, because I would like to OTK my opponent here, but the Sunny Snitch is going to give them a fair amount of life points, but I think we'll still be able to pull it off regardless. So I'm going to lead with the Adhara, and the reason that I lead by specialing with Adhara is because I want to leave my options open to make calc at any point if possible later on during the turn. I know I want to lead with Longyuan because I'm pretty sure that's going to force the Trouble Sunny, which I want to force as early as possible to get the destroy from the Leela out of the way as early on as possible. With the Fateful Adventure Jet Synchron, I do actually have a decent amount of plays, and I'll go ahead and show you, because you might see these cards and be like, well, what can you really do with these? We'll actually show you here in a little bit, but like I said, I'm going to lead with the Longyuan. Now, I was pretty confident that my opponent was going to respond with Trouble Sunny here, probably popping the Longyuan, so that way I wouldn't be able to do much. I'd have the Swordsoul token out, and I'd kind of be locked out of certain plays, but we're actually not going to be locked out quite as much as it might seem at a glance here. So yeah, again, they're going to pop the Longyuan, and they even flip up the Callby to get rid of the Ashuna, which is a little bit annoying, but actually it's a little bit of a relief to know what that back row is and to have it out of the way as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Fateful Adventure to add the Water Enchantress, sending the Jet Synchron. This might look a little weird because I've already got the Fateful Adventure, but I'm going to normal summon the Water Enchantress because I need to get this Swordsoul token off the board, so I need to sync with it. I can use the Water Enchantress with the Swordsoul token in order to summon my Yazi. I also get the Dracoback as a bonus, which is actually going to be fairly relevant here in a moment. Now again, my opponent has gained quite a few life points. I want to put a stop to that because I do plan on ending the game this turn. So I'm going to summon my Baxia. My opponent's going to gain their last 200 before I shuffle back, well, not shuffle back, but I put back both of their Link monsters into the extra deck. Now I can use my Enchantress to banish her from the grave to get Rite of Aramesir and get my adventure token out. And now I can use this Dracoback with the Jet Synchron in order to bring it back and then equip the Dracoback. I'm also going to use Baxia's effect. I probably should have popped the Dracoback, but I popped the Fateful Adventure. It's not really going to matter, but I'll use that with Adhara. And now that I have the Adhara and the Jet Synchron, I'm going to go into Hulk. And as always, Hulk is like your main goal, right? Like if you just get to Hulk, you can do a lot of plays, or if you're going second, you can very, very, very likely end the game. So that's like everything before this point was just me trying to get to Hulk and trying to make sure the board was clear. I had tested for hand traps. I'd gotten responses out of my opponent. You know, we got the back row and the Trouble Sunny out of the way. So now we are able to just go into the Hulk line here. As I mentioned before, we're getting the Aurora Dawn, and then getting the Denglong after we summon the O-Lion. Using O-Lion now to get our extra token. And in this case, I will use Denglong's effect here in order to get it up to level 7, because I want to summon a Cheng Ying here, even though I've already used my Baron. Or have I? No, I'm sorry, I haven't used my Baron. I thought I had already, that's my mistake. But yeah, now I'm going to use my Baron in order to get, even though my opponent, you know, probably doesn't have a response. They haven't responded yet by this point. But now here's how we're going to finish. The opponent is with Borreload Savage Dragon. This doesn't just serve as an Omni-Negate here, but by equipping the Auroradon, it actually goes up to 4,050 attack points, which is going to be just enough in order to find lethal here. So you see, even though our opponent was able to gain 1,200 life points with the Trouble Sunny, we were still able to find the OTK and ultimately put a stop to it. So that just goes to show kind of what I was talking about in the deck profile itself, right? Where like, you know, especially going second, like our combos are almost never going to go off in uninterrupted, but that doesn't mean that our plays are less optimal necessarily because they're uninterrupted. It's still pretty easy to find a way to end the game, not relatively easily, but sometimes you just have to get a little bit creative. But all right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next game. All right, so this game was against a kind of archetype I've been seeing a lot lately, which is just like a good stuff pile, which is actually kind of cool. I actually like Yu-Gi-Oh decks that are not necessarily just an archetype, but just like 40 good cards. And it makes me nostalgic for, you know, just having a Yu-Gi Boomer moment, don't mind me. But yeah, our opponent's just kind of playing 40 good cards, basically, which is cool. I respect that. So our hand is not super great here. Swordsoul Emergence into Taia is pretty much our only life play. Opponent's got the Maxx, but we fortunately have the call by. I was just making sure, yeah, they were playing 40, right? Yeah, no, it was a 40 card deck, but yeah, just looking at the rest of our hand here, the Jet Synchron, the Nibiru, the Protos, yeah, there's not really a whole lot we can do aside from this, I don't think. As always, I am trying to learn a lot of new decks at once, so if you spot any alternate or better lines that I could go for at any point, do feel free to let me know in the comments. I am always open to, you know, that feedback. I've said it before, I've said it a million times. You know, half the reason I'm even able to do as well as I am in Master Duel is because of the help that I get from you all. So, as always, I am kind of counting on you all for that there. But, yeah, we'll end up using the Protos just to discard for Longyuan here. So that way, you know, even though this hand is pretty mediocre, we can at the very least end on Chi Xiao plus Baron. That's another reason why I kind of say that, like, your Swordsoul Tenyi skills kind of, you know, come in handy a little bit here. It's nice to just have the, I guess the reflexes, so to speak, because a lot of the combo lines are not necessarily the same, but similar enough. So I am actually going to negate destroy this Fateful Adventure here with the Baron. That might seem a little weird. I often don't just negate the first thing my opponent plays, but knowing that the Fateful Adventure can be used in so many different ways to not only get, of course, the Gryphon Rider, the Omni-Negate out, but also to accelerate combos like we saw in our last game. So plus if Fateful Adventure is off the board, even if they have the Water Enchantress or the Rite of Aramesir, they then at least can't go for the Dracoback plus the Gryphon Rider nearly as easily, if they can at all. So Fateful Adventure, I don't feel too bad. Just straight up negating that, I feel like that is a fairly good choke point there. So yeah, the opponent then uses their Foxy Tune. As you can see, they're including the punk engine in their 40 card pile of good stuff here. They'll get the Madam Spider. That doesn't really end up coming up later, though. It'll be fine. They are still going to use the Water Enchantress for the Rite of Aramesir, hence why the Madam Spider didn't come up. That's because the opponent planned to use the Adventure token here. So they'll link those away for the Hulk. As many decks are doing right now, it's just all about getting the Hulk to 5x, right? We do have the Chi here, though, which I'm going to use to negate the Hulk. And the opponent, fortunately, does not have a response. I was kind of certain they would, but they fortunately did not. I suppose at some point you do just have to go for it anyway, but they do have a Destiny Fusion for follow-up, so, you know, that kind of explains why they were so eager to go for Hulk, even though they apparently didn't have a response. It's because they had DPE as a follow-up. They'll run over our Chi here and then pop the Baron. So with the Jet Synchron and Nibiru being the only cards I have in hand here, it's a little dire, but we do still have the Ashuna engraved, so there is that at the very least. And we top deck the Rite of Aramesir, which is fairly lucky, but then to be fair, there were a lot of good top decks we could have had, right? Like any Tenyi monster, the Gryphon Rider, like any part of our adventure engine, not just the Rite of the Aramesir, like the Foolish. Yeah, we had a lot of good stuff to top deck. Well, not any part. The Dracoback wouldn't have been a very good top deck, but you know what I mean. So yep, I'm going to go ahead and summon the... Oh, actually, you know what? I want to talk about this a little bit. This went by a little bit quickly here, but note that my opponent doesn't activate DPE until I go to activate the Gryphon Rider's effect. And I believe, honestly, that was a pretty big misplay for my opponent's part, right? If they had hit the Fateful Adventure as soon as I played it, like I was just talking about, you hit the Fateful Adventure, that'll often just shut down the adventure line from being able to do anything too scary or significant, particularly relating to the Dracoback or the Gryphon Rider. Similarly, had they popped my token, I wouldn't have been able to summon anything else, and I would have kind of just been forced to could really lose at this point. Even though I would have, you know, hit 0 life points right away, it still would have ultimately been a loss. But now that I've been able to activate add the Gryphon Rider and activate its effect, now the DPE popping doesn't matter here because my condition has already been met. I only needed to have an adventure token to activate the effect. Sure, the opponent's DPE will resolve first and then pop the token, but that doesn't matter. The Gryphon Rider is still going to summon itself, and then because I'll have the Jet Synchron and the Gryphon Rider out, I'll still be able to make plays. So that is a very important thing I wanted to point out that happened in this game. That is definitely something to watch out for. Because, yeah, as you can see, I still get to summon the Gryphon Rider. I don't get my Dracoback, but that isn't going to matter here because all I'm interested in at this point is, you guessed it, Hulky Fibrax. As long as you can get to the Hulky Fibrax, you can make plays. It's just like, I feel the need to like drill that into everybody's head because it is so very true. So we use the Jet Synchron Soul, grab our extra O-Lion with the Hulk in order to make the Auroradon. It's also not too shabby as we'll get an extra token, but the opponent just concedes as they realize that I can pretty easily find lethal at this point. So, alright, let's go ahead and take a look at the next game. Okay, so this next duel is going to be yet another instance of going second against Evil/Life Twin. And I don't remember off the top of my head how we won this one, so let's take a look. Well, we did open C and Ash. That would be that would be fairly helpful, but I think my opponent managed to play through both, if I recall correctly. Yeah, so I ashed the secret password here, which I did have a feeling was bait. Actually, you know what? I should be saving Ash for the normal summon, shouldn't I? Now that I think about it. Yeah, that was definitely not right to ash the secret password here, because it was bait. It ended up being bait. My opponent just had the Evil Twin in their hand. And yeah, if they normal summon the Evil Twin, then they can't just normal summon another one later. So... Huh, okay, yeah. It's funny, having to play against Evil Twin, you know, even playing with Evil Twin, I didn't play with it all that much leading up to this pack being released, but now playing against Evil Twin, you know, there's obviously a lot more of them running around, so it's definitely knowledge that is more skilled to, knowledge that will serve you better, that's what I meant to say. I was like, skill, where did that word come from? Where was I going with that? No, but, yeah, so our opponent is going to get their plays off, but hey, you know what, this just makes it more exciting anyway, right? I guess that's what I'm telling myself. Just don't mind me inhaling a little copium for misplaying there. It's all good. They are going to get their Trouble Sunny off, which is, you know, it is what it is. They get 2 back rows, which I think is a little bit scarier than the Trouble Sunny itself, and then we will get to go for a turn here, and because we are just the luckiest player in the world, we do manage to top deck Rite of Aramesir. I'm going to start by activating Fateful Adventure, but the opponent is going to respond right away with Trouble Sunny's effect. This opponent seeming to agree with kind of my philosophy of just pop the trouble, or not the trouble, the Fateful Adventure as soon as it hits the board, and you're usually good to go. Now here, in this case, we've got Rite plus Roxrose Dragon, so that is all it's going to take for us to go into a Hulk, which, as we all know by this point, is all that it takes in order for us to secure the game. As long as my opponent doesn't respond to these... Oh, no, I'm sorry, we go for Yazi here. Right, and then we go for the Hulk. My apologies. Yeah, I got a little bit ahead of myself, but yeah, no reason not to go for the Yazi here because we're going to use Red Rose as a synchro material. Like I mentioned in the profile, you then get Roxrose, and then you get the Basalt Shoot for the Red Rose. Then you go into the Crystron Hulky Fibrax. So my opponent does have an imperm for the Hulk here. Unfortunately, there wasn't really a whole lot I could do to play around it, but just because that they negated my Hulk, that doesn't mean that our plays are done. Not by a long shot here, actually. Because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Yazi's effect to pop itself in the other face down, which does force the Crossout Designator. Opponent ends up calling Cypher and Gear Gamma. That's just kind of a throwaway call, I guess. But yeah, they weren't going to really call anything too threatening against us on a blind Crossout anyway. So now I can use Yazi to summon Taia. Taia can summon a token by banishing said Yazi, and then we can go into a Chi Xiao because I've got the Longyuan in my hand. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use both effects, right? I'm going to use Taia and Chi Xiao, chain blocking, so that if my opponent does happen to have an Ash or something, they can't use it on Chi Xiao itself, because I do really want to add this Swordsoul Emergence here. I would love to use Emergence to add Protos, but here I have to use it to add Vishuda for my plan to go through here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to summon the Longyuan, sending the Vishuda, right? And then while I've got my token up, I'm going to go ahead and use both Ashuna and Vishuda. I'll start by using Ashuna for Adhara. Or no, I'm sorry, I'm only going to use Ashuna first. Then I sink into Cheng Ying. That's right, I apologize. Again, just getting a little bit ahead of myself here. We're going to summon the Cheng Ying, and then now we can use that Adhara we summoned to get a Monk. And then that's how we're going to trigger our Vishuda. We can use Vishuda to bounce one of the evil twins, and then since we banished a card, we can use Cheng Ying to banish the other, and then that's going to you know, prevent the opponent from doing anything too threatening. Although they do get to still use the evil twin as a quick effect, so I'm gonna have to end up banishing the defense mode monster just to be safe. But we have far more than enough damage to finish the opponent off here all the same. So once again, I wouldn't really call what I did just there a standard combo line, really by any regards, but it just kind of came about as circumstance. So it definitely pays to just keep in mind, you know, what you can do and what all you can make, because again, just going into that Yazi first ended up being hugely crucial to still winning the game and playing through interruptions. You want to make sure as you're making plays that you're also setting yourself up for alternative ways to make plays in case your current plays get interrupted. Generally, playing assuming that your opponent has interruptions is a good way to go, but you shouldn't let that hinder you, right? You should play assuming they have interruptions, but you should be thinking about side paths and alternate lines of play based on what interruption you think they might have. But you know, not freezing up, not playing anything because they might have interruptions. That's not what we want to avoid here. That is what we want to avoid, rather. So, all right, I've got one more game for us to take a look at. Let's go ahead and jump straight into it. Okay, so this last game here is going to be against Altergeist, which, funnily enough, I didn't expect to see that deck of all decks, you know, at this time of the. I don't know. That just seems like a deck that maybe a lot of people wouldn't play. Just because there's newer stuff to play, and Altergeist doesn't really have a whole lot, unfortunately, going for it right now. Neither does my opponent here, as they only have one back row. So I guess this is kind of like a little bit of a standard line, but at the same time, it's not going to be because our opponent has Maxx. So that's right. I'm remembering this game now. Sometimes I'll start a replay and I'm like, how did this game go again? And I kind of try to guess as I commentate, but I remember at this point. So yeah, opponent's going to lead with Maxx, but we're going to do the combo, the combo line that leads was starting with Baron here, right? We're going to get the Red Rose Dragon's effect. We are holding the Roxrose, but that's okay. Red Rose can still special from hand. Now, I am going to Baron the Ash here, and it might seem like a weirdly early time to Baron, but I'm actually planning, because I have the Rite of Aramesir, to get another Omni Negate a little bit later anyway. So my opponent is going to get 3 draws before I can get the Gryphon Rider on the board, and that is a little bit scary. They might, you know, Nibiru me before I'm able to get the Omni Negate out, but I don't think ultimately it's going to be that big of a deal there. It's just a few draws, and the odds are definitely in my favor for them to not have the Nibiru during those few draws. I think it was actually only 2 now that I look. It was only 2 draws there. And then I just put 8,000 damage on the board, so I was just like, whatever, I'm just going to go for game. And sure enough, my opponent is not really able to stop me here, and I am able to very easily secure lethal. So that was just a very, very quick game there, but it just further emphasizes that the way that this deck often plays out is, you know, non-standard, non-linear. You're just kind of looking for lethal, and it's not very difficult to find. I think that's one of the reasons that this deck ends up being so powerful, right? Is because it's got a lot of different ways that it can just kind of like BS into plays. I don't know, it just kind of feels like you can always just pull something out of your ass if your opponent's got a response, which might be why this deck is so powerful, and definitely was very powerful in the OCG format, where it was that Master Duel is currently mostly representing. But in any case, let's go ahead and move on to the outro here. Okay, everybody, thank you for watching all the way to the very end like this. I very much appreciate that, not only just personally, but also just as a way of supporting the channel. That means a lot to me. It also means a lot to me, those of you who are chiming in the comments, and those of you who are subscribing as well. You know, the comments, like I mentioned earlier, especially when I'm learning new decks, which is going to be happening a lot lately. I'm really counting on you guys to help me you know, just spot out some alternate plays I can make, or if I'm making some misplays, you know. Don't ever be shy about pointing that out. That is definitely not something I'm opposed to hearing, as, you know, it's definitely an important part of the process in order to just improving your plays, to acknowledge your mistakes and then improve upon them from there. So that's just the philosophy I kind of like to follow, and it seems to have worked fairly well for me. And then subscribing, you know, that's not only, you know, another good way to support the channel, but also to get notifications of when my videos come out, which do come out every single day. So yeah, Adventure Tenyi here. I had a lot of fun playing it, and I definitely plan on playing and tweaking with this build even more as the season progresses. This might be one of the quote-unquote main decks I end up falling back on, because another thing I'm doing, not only just showing off decks for the channel, but I'm also just trying to get a feel of what decks I would like to use just going forward from here, because it just seems like there's a whole swath, a whole broad horizon of options to choose from, which is kind of cool. You know, some people might be like, oh, but they're all adventure-based decks, but yeah, they're all still unique in their own right. So maybe Adventure Tenyi will just be the dominant one. Maybe it won't be. Who knows? This is a very interesting format to be in, because it's rather unique from both the TCG and OCG when these sets were released in each respective format. So I'm definitely interested to, you know, keep testing decks moving forward, but I do definitely expect to return to Adventure Tenyi at least once before the season is through. So yeah, I think that's about all I got for this one. So without further ado, this is XLex signing out. Hope you guys have a fantastic day.